What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, and as you can see on the screen here, today we're going to cover some of the top upcoming NFL free agents for the 2024 season, make some predictions on some of their landing spots, and discuss some of the fallout in fantasy football that will come from some of these moves these players are going to make. I'm recording this on Saturday, March 2nd. The first thing you should be aware of, coming up this upcoming Tuesday, March 5th, is the deadline for NFL teams to use their franchise tag on upcoming free agents on their roster. We've already seen one skill player be tagged by his team this offseason. That is Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins. He will be back in the fold with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and company for the 2024 NFL season. So you will not see T. Higgins on this list. I have 11 players in this video that I'm going to discuss. I'm going to make some predictions from what I've kind of read about whether or not I think they're going to stay with their previous team or if they're going to move to a new one and who that new team might be. If you're interested in doing the same, why don't you leave a comment on the video below about some players that you're interested in tracking movements for this offseason and give some predictions of your own on where you think they're going to land. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more of it on this channel, we would appreciate it if you give us a thumbs up on the video. And as always, please click that subscribe button so you can get access to more NFL content as we roll it out for you throughout the rest of the offseason here. Let's get started. The first free agent that I want to discuss is Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver Mike Evans. The 30-year-old has a real chance to actually leave the Buccaneers this year, coming off a phenomenal season where he averaged 8 targets per game with Baker Mayfield under center, had 24%, a little over 24% of team targets, over 1,200 receiving yards, and 13 touchdowns. Another 1,000-plus yard season for Mike Evans. He has gone over 1,000 yards every single year of his career, and there's a reason that he's going to be in high demand. Evans is looking to cash in on this resume. This is probably his last best shot to get a big contract with some big average annual value. And obviously he's working overtime in the media. Dalton Schultz of Bleacher Report reporting that Evans' agent, Derrick Gilmore here, says Mike wants to play with an elite quarterback and an offense that will showcase him, wants to be paid like a top receiver, and wants to have a chance to win a Super Bowl. Does not want to play with a rookie this year. Now, I do think there's a really good chance that Evans returns to Tampa Bay. I think a lot of that hinges on whether or not Tampa Bay is going to bring back Mayfield or a similar veteran to keep Tampa Bay in contention in an NFC South that I do think is pretty wide open. With a ton of wide receiver needy teams out there with cap space, I do think there's a realistic chance Evans leaves the Buccaneers this year. If Evans is to leave Tampa Bay, I do think one of the most exciting potential places he could go would be with the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, who did create a little bit of cap space by releasing MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, within the last week. So that is a team to keep an eye on, I think, for Mike Evans. If we take a look at the teams with the most available cap space, shout out to the admins over at overthecap.com, the Kansas City Chiefs are not one of the top teams with money available under the cap this year to spend. In fact, they've already spent the most money on retaining some of their own free agents here in 2024 because teams can still re-sign their own players. So it does seem like from a financial standpoint, Kansas City may be a little more hamstrung than some of these other teams. We see teams like the Patriots, the Commanders, the Bears, Titans, and the Colts with the most money available. These are probably the teams to keep an eye on for some of these skill players as a result here when free agency opens in the next couple of weeks. Speaking of the Indianapolis Colts, with just north of $70 million in cap space heading into the 2024 season, the next free agent on my list for you is Michael Pittman, the 26-year-old veteran wide receiver, just coming off of a season where he averaged just under 10 targets per game, had 1,152 receiving yards, just 4 touchdowns between Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew throwing to him. This would be a really exciting player for any new team to land in 2024. However, it does seem like Colts general manager Chris Ballard has thrown a little bit of cold water on the idea that Pittman is going to be changing colors this summer. Colts general manager here basically saying as much at the NFL Combine here this week. Shout out to James Boyd of The Athletic for publishing this article within the last few days. Ballard hasn't explicitly said that they're going to franchise tag Michael Pittman, but basically making it seem like there's a virtual certainty that Pittman is going to be back with the Indianapolis Colts. So based off of some of the coach speak here, GM speak, based off of the amount of money the Colts have available, they've got Anthony Richardson locked down under center with his rookie contract coming back healthy in 2024. I do think that they will bring Michael Pittman back to Indianapolis. So while technically on our list as a free agent right now, I'm not expecting Pittman to be anywhere else other than Indianapolis here in 2024. If you think differently, please let me know in a comment below. If you've seen something else, love to have a little bit of a discussion about Michael Pittman and what that does around the league if he leaves. First running back on my list is Saquon Barkley, the 27-year-old from the New York Giants. Barkley averaged just over 17 carries a game and just over 4 targets a game in 2023. He did miss 3 games, so his raw total numbers are a little underwhelming. 960 rushing yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, 41 receptions, 280 receiving yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. Barkley seems like a player that wants to play for a contender, and I feel safe in saying that the Giants, in their current form, are not necessarily up to that standard. In my opinion, I would expect Barkley to be interested in moving to a contender. I think an interesting team to keep an eye on is the Los Angeles Chargers. We now have Jim Harbaugh coaching the Chargers this year. He's fresh off a national championship at Michigan, had a very successful coaching stint with the San Francisco 49ers about a decade ago in the NFL. And Harbaugh had much more of a run-oriented offense than Brandon Staley's Chargers did these past few seasons. So I would expect, with Eckler also being on the way out, it seems, in Los Angeles, a player like Barkley would be a really interesting target for the Chargers. But there are several teams that I think should be interested in this running back, who I think is soon to be previously of the New York Giants. Do you think Saquon's staying in New York? Do you think he's going elsewhere? Leave a comment in the video below. We can certainly discuss further. Would love to see some of your thoughts on Saquon. The next player on my list, Calvin Ridley, with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2023, previously of the Atlanta Falcons. He looked pretty good this past season after missing an entire year due to his gambling suspension from the league. Ridley had 22.5% of Jacksonville's targets from Trevor Lawrence and CJ Beathard in 2023. He had over 1,000 receiving yards, had 8 touchdowns, and now will look to cash in on proving that he still is capable of being a top wide receiver in the National Football League. Teams that should be interested in Calvin Ridley, once again, going back to teams with money to spend. The Patriots are really hurting at wide receiver. The Commanders could definitely be in the mix here, although I do think they are a little bit more solidified at wide receiver than some of the other teams on this list. The Bears, outside of DJ Moore, definitely need some help. The Titans definitely need some help. The Colts, outside of Pittman, definitely could make a move for somebody else here. The Texans and the Cardinals may be names to watch. No real specific rumors just yet on where Calvin Ridley may end up. I feel like he's a good candidate to change colors here this offseason. I don't think he will be back with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let me know in the comment section where you think Calvin Ridley might be playing in 2024 this fall. Next on the list, Marquise Hollywood Brown, previously of the Ravens and Arizona Cardinals. Brown had a pretty modest 2023. Missed 3 games, 570 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns, but definitely a dynamic field stretching weapon that could be a game changer for teams looking to add to their wide receiver room. Almost certainly will not cost as much money as some of the other names that I have discussed here. No specific rumors on Hollywood Brown that I have seen that seem actionable at this point, but I would go back to the teams that have some money to spend and would expect teams like the Patriots and the Bears and the Titans, et cetera, here on this list to be interested in Hollywood. Obviously, that includes the Cardinals, the team that he just played for, but it will be interesting to see if the Cardinals opt to pay him, since they are in a very good spot with the 4th overall pick in the NFL draft to consider drafting a very, very high-end rookie wide receiver on a relatively affordable contract to be their wide receiver 1 in 2024, which I think is the biggest reason why Marquise Brown will not be playing for the Cardinals this upcoming fall. Where do you think Marquise Brown is going to go? Leave a comment in the video below, and I'll let you know what I think about your thoughts. Baker Mayfield is one of 2 free agent quarterbacks that I think are extremely important in terms of shaping the quarterback landscape in 2024. Led the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a divisional round appearance this past season and almost knocked off the Detroit Lions in that appearance. Threw for over 4,000 yards with the Buccaneers, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, made the most of his opportunity with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in the NFC South in 2023. And it does seem like he's poised to cash in as a result. I would think the most likely landing spot for Mayfield is right back in Tampa Bay, but I think Mayfield and Mike Evans are potentially a package deal for the Buccaneers. Do they run it back in 2024 and potentially beyond with this group if they think they can win in the NFC South? Something interesting with Mayfield to keep an eye on. Doug Kyde of the Boston Herald reporting that the New England Patriots are interested in Baker Mayfield. Patriots obviously have a top 3 pick, the number 3 pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, and they're also poised to use that selection on a rookie quarterback. So it'll be really interesting to see what the Patriots choose to do in free agency and with that draft pick. They certainly have the salary cap flexibility to really make a splash here. With the amount of money that the Patriots have to spend, they could certainly make a play for Mayfield and go after any of these wide receivers. Mayfield's teammate from last year, Mike Evans, Pittman if he somehow avoids re-signing with the Colts, Ridley, Hollywood Brown, and a couple of other guys that we still have to discuss in this video could certainly be interesting options. Other teams that could be interested in Mayfield, that are reported to be interested in Mayfield, the Atlanta Falcons, definitely looking for an upgrade at the quarterback position to add to the likes of Drake London and Kyle Pitts and give themselves a little bit of a better chance to compete in the NFC South. That would be very interesting, obviously, changing colors within the NFC South. I think Baker Mayfield's most likely to end up back in Tampa Bay after a successful campaign in 2023, though. Where do you think Mayfield is going to end up? Leave a comment in the video below, and I'd be happy to discuss Baker Mayfield with each of you. Derrick Henry is a little bit of an enigma. We know intellectually that elder statesmen at the running back position tend to drop off dramatically in production. We know that the salaries that these players tend to command in free agency drop off a cliff. We saw this just this past year with guys like Leonard Fournette and Ezekiel Elliott not really being able to get contracts or meaningful opportunities for most of the season. And it does feel like Derrick Henry may run the risk of having that happen to him here in 2024, as hard as that is to believe. Derrick Henry led the entire NFL in rush attempts in 2023. He had over 1,100 yards rushing. He had 12 rushing touchdowns, 28 targets, 214 receiving yards, averaged 16.5 rushing attempts per game with 2 targets per game. So it's not like this player cannot still command the workload required to be a lead tailback in the NFL. It's just a question of which offense is going to give him the opportunity to do what he does well and best in 2024. No specific rumors on Derrick Henry that seem actionable at this point either. Teams that should be interested in Derrick Henry if he chooses to leave the Titans, in my opinion, the Los Angeles Chargers and the Baltimore Ravens are 2 of the best teams that would be interesting fits for him here in 2024. Gabe Davis, formerly of the Buffalo Bills, posted on his Instagram story this long goodbye to Buffalo. Definitely seems like he is going to be changing teams as a result in 2024. Frankly, I was shocked to see this player is still just 24 years old. He has been in the NFL for quite some time and was a really, really good field-stretching weapon with Josh Allen. The downside to Gabe Davis's free agency case is that there's not very many quarterbacks other than Josh Allen that are preferable to play with his explosive skill set. Gabe Davis is another player on this list that I think is more of a luxury addition for a team with a lot of money to spend. So we're back to that group of the Patriots, the Commanders, the Bears, the Titans, Texans, Cardinals, the Lions, looking for another wide receiver to add to the mix here. I think those are the most likely landing spots for a player like Gabe Davis in clearly that second tier of top free agents at wide receiver here in 2024. Where do you think Davis is going to land? If you don't think I mentioned the team, I'd love to hear your case for where Gabe Davis is going to be playing football this fall. Davis averaged just under 5 targets per game with the Buffalo Bills last year, 15% of team targets, but he had 7 touchdowns on his 45 receptions with Josh Allen. The representative of the tight end position in fantasy football, Dalton Schultz had an awesome season with rookie quarterback CJ Stroud. Schultz missed 2 games. He averaged 6 targets per game, had 59 receptions, over 600 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. It does seem like the most likely result for Dalton Schultz this offseason is a return to the Houston Texans. It's where he likes to be. It's where he wants to be in 2024. So my prediction is Dalton Schultz ends up back in Houston. Let me know in the comment section below if you agree with me on my assessment that Dalton Schultz is probably going to be playing with Stroud and the Texans again in 2024. Last running back free agent that we have to discuss in this video is Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders. We saw Zamir White get the opportunity to be their starter at the end of the 2023 season, and he looked very serviceable in that role. The reality is, general managers have started to catch on to the fact that running backs are very, very replaceable as far as production is concerned in football, and so from a salary perspective is not necessarily a position that they have to allocate a ton of their salary cap dollars to, which is why I think it's likely Josh Jacobs, with a new regime in charge in Las Vegas, ends up leaving the Raiders in free agency. Jacobs, if he does leave the Raiders, would be in a very good position, I think, to cash in on a team looking to contend right away, because we certainly know he can handle the workload, and then he's a very talented player. Average 18 rush attempts per game this past season with 4 targets per game as well. 1,100 all-purpose yards and 6 touchdowns in 13 games. So a very, very strong resume for Jacobs. Had a very, very strong 2022 season with the Raiders. And I do think this former first-round pick cashes in free agency and leaves the Raiders this season. Where do you think Josh Jacobs ends up? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd be happy to entertain your thoughts and have a little bit of a back and forth on Josh Jacobs. The final player on our list to discuss, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. Torn Achilles midway through the 2023 season derailed the Vikings' 2023 campaign. It seems like it would be in Minnesota's best interest to retain Kirk Cousins, but it's in Kirk Cousins' best interest to go and get the most money that he can at the league's most valuable position. Cousins is likely to get a good average annual value deal, but for a short number of years. So probably like a 2 or 3 year contract, regardless of where he goes, based off of where he is on the age curve, and go probably year to year and get like 1 year, 2 year contracts throughout the rest of his career, depending on how long he wants to play. It seems like Cousins is the most likely option for the Atlanta Falcons this offseason. That's where I personally think Cousins is going to be playing. Would be a very interesting change of scenery for Kirk Cousins, pairing up with the likes of Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson in the backfield. This Atlanta team does seem like they are more likely to take a leap with Cousins under center. I think the biggest thing a player like Kirk Cousins has to think about at his age is where can he have the best chance to win. And I think it's in his best interest to potentially leave the NFC North, because you have the Packers with Jordan Love that are looking pretty good right now. The Lions were just in the NFC Championship game. They look pretty good right now. And the Bears are poised to be on the come up, right? By selecting a quarterback #1 overall this year, they have a chance to change their standing in the NFL really quickly, depending on how that pick goes for them. Whereas in the NFC South, things are a little bit more wide open. A team like the Falcons, with weapons like Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson in the backfield, with Cousins under center, definitely would be the favorite to win that division, I think, if he were to make that decision to go to Atlanta. So that's ultimately what I think Kirk Cousins does here. I think he leaves Minnesota and he signs with the Atlanta Falcons, who seem to have interest in signing him here. And I'm not just making that up. We have Dianna Russini of The Athletic. Shout out to her. She does great work actually talking about how the Falcons are definitely interested in Cousins as well. So this is a little bit of smoke to the theory here that Cousins ends up leaving Minnesota to go to the Falcons. Really interested in what's going to happen here in free agency. That's why I couldn't wait to put a video together and bring it to you all. Let me know what you think about not just these guys, but some other free agents that I didn't discuss. We'd be happy to maybe make a follow-up video. We're going to be putting together a lot more NFL content in the offseason than we ever have before on this channel. Stay tuned for more streams of underdog drafts, for example. Did one last week with Chuck. We're going to be doing a ton of underdog streams this season for NFL. We're going to be also putting some videos out about the UFL, United Football League. Spring football is back, folks. Kicking off on March 30th with week 1. We will have free projections for our Discord subscribers for each week of the UFL season. So if that's something you're interested in, also consider subscribing to the channel. And certainly in our Discord, we'll be discussing some of the top NFL free agents as they change teams throughout the rest of the spring and summer as well. So our Discord, a great place to be if you want to talk all things NFL as we gear up for yet another NFL season here. Thank you for watching this video, folks, and as always, I will talk to you soon.